Welcome back to another episode of Maddie's Rap, the show where we rap about things that guys rap about when we're hanging out at places like the barbershop, the sports bar, you name it. And so today, I have a very special guest in the house, Dr. David Miller. And we're here in Charlotte, North Carolina. He's with the the Faith Connection show on Praise 100.9. Dr. Miller.
Look, it's great to be here. You said special guest, but I ain't sure how special I am, but I am really glad to be on the show with you today.
Well, Dr. Miller, thank you. We're glad to have Dr. Miller because, as you know, folks that watch, we do a lot of sports. My main man, Brian Moore from the Be More Faithful radio show, he's going to be with us in our next episode. But the thing I want to talk about today is sports, and baseball, believe it or not, was my first sport. Baseball is my favorite sport to play as a kid. I'm more of a tennis player now, but I grew up watching baseball. I'm originally from Long Island, New York, so I grew up watching the Yankees and the Mets on television. I'm a Yankees fan. Grew up watching Dave Winfield and Reggie Jackson. I remember the Reggie Jackson candy bar when I was a kid back in the 70s. So baseball was certainly a sport that's near and dear to my heart, though it's changed a bit. You're a baseball player.
Man, love it. And, I grew up as a kid playing baseball. Came from a baseball family. And, of course, Harrisburg, North Carolina, if you didn't play baseball, you didn't play anything, And so I had family members involved in baseball then. It was just a fantastic life for a young man. Now, of course, now you mentioned Brian in football. Now, Brian was a contender.
Uh-huh.
I'm a pretender. So that's the difference. What is it they say? If you can't do it, then you teach it.
That's right. Right.
So I've worked with kids in baseball. Just love the sport, and hey, I'm here to talk about it. Can't do much about it, but I can talk about it. How about that?
That's right. Now tell us what position did you play?
I pitched some. I caught and played first base. Mostly in high school, I pitched, and my uncle Clarence had a fantastic curveball,
wow.
And he taught me how to throw it at a young age, and I could throw that curveball.
Wow!
So, but it was a good curve, but it wasn't good enough.
It wasn't good enough. Now let me ask you this. You mentioned the curveball. I've heard this theme before with a lot of the coaches that coach Pee Wee League and Pony League, I should say, some of the younger, and then you get into, of course, your JV and varsity in high school. Do you feel like because I heard this a lot as a baseball player myself. I was an outfielder. And I thought I could pitch until playing stickball. They were eating me up, so I left it alone. But is there something to this thing of how many curved pitches that young kids should throw and why?
Yeah, I mean, when you're coaching, and I coached Babe Ruth baseball, and my son played, and so I had a real motivation. You should teach them to throw fastballs because curving a ball requires them to twist the wrist, and it's a little bit more strenuous on an arm that hasn't fully developed.
Oh, right.
So that's why you don't want them to try to curve the ball too much. I mean, it's good to teach them the fundamentals of it, but you don't want them doing it so much until it becomes their favorite pitch.
Right.
But that's generally it. And with kids, you're not going to be able to tell them that not throwing a curveball is the right thing to do.
Right.
They really want to use their best stuff, because they want the approval of their peers, and they want to be winners.
They want to win. That's right.
So, but yes, I think you have to limit kids from that because it can really hurt the arm before it really develops.
Well, I'll tell you, I wish somebody had said that to the guys that I had to bat against that were pitchers that had curveballs, because the worst pitch I hated looking at was that slow curve. I'll never forget this guy. His name was Vincent. He would throw this curveball that would come in here and look like it was going to hit me, and I'd lean out of the way, and it'd come right in and catch the corner of that plate. And it just annoyed me to no end. I never could figure out how to hit it.
Well, that's where my curveball was. You always throw it at the plate. Because if you throw it at the plate, it's always outside.
That's true.
And it depends on how big a bowl you have in it, how much it curves.
Right.
So that's, some pitchers will throw a curveball, but it only breaks, just very narrowly. But if you got a good curveball, it breaks rainbow style.
Wow.
So you have to throw it at the batter in order for it to hit the marker in the plate.
I guess you had to have a lot of courage to standing there and know that ball wasn't going to hit you.
Well, you hope that he doesn't have that kind of courage,
right?
Because he can't run and swing and hit at the same time.
That's
so,
right. That's right.
Usually they're backing out and swinging, so that puts you at the advantage. Gives you the advantage instead of the disadvantage.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah, but now you played baseball, though, right?
I played. I kind of similar situation where. I came off the bench. They put me in the games when this is personal, but we Maddie's rap. We hanging out, guys. Talk. My coach didn't like me. Didn't like me. I moved down from New York in '85, and the high school I went to. I won't call any names, but those watching that know me from high school, they know who this coach is. But I'm gonna leave it alone. Okay. I think he had a problem with guys in New York, and one of the things he didn't like about me. I played defense very well. Mm-hmm. I was fast. I'd run down. They called me the thief because I would steal a lot of fly balls that would hit foul. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, you're done. You hit that, you're done. You don't get to hit anymore. But the thing he didn't like about me, and this was I think personal bias. He liked First of all, he liked some of these outfielders that played two positions. Typically, they played infield and outfield.
Oh yeah.
Or pitcher. Right. And the reason he wanted that, he said there was a method to the madness. He wanted guys throwing on the rope from the outfield.
Oh, yeah.
As a kid, I developed, I don't know if it was trick camera or I shouldn't say trick camera, but just watching camera angles. But when you're a kid, you tend to imitate what your favorite players do.
Right.
And I would watch Dave Winfield for the Yankees, and he'd do his crow hop, and then he'd throw the ball and put an arc in it. Right. So as a little boy, I'm thinking, okay, well, when you're throwing from the outfield, you're supposed to put an arc in it. Right. So that's the way I learned to throw it. Now, I could still throw a guy out from the outfield, but I didn't throw on a rope. Mm-hmm. And when it's tough to teach somebody to unlearn something they've been doing for so long. So by the time I got to high school, me trying to throw it on the rope resulted in a little bit of a cutoff. Man, we didn't work out. It's just a bad relationship. So I played 1 year of JV after playing Pony League. I played 1 year of JV, and I said, I'm done with this coach. I'm going to track. So the girls were in track anyway, so I went to track because that's where the girls were.
Well, the strange thing about baseball is that technique is sort of relative. Mm-hmm. I mean, one person does it one way, another person does it another way, but they both get great results from it. So I guess maybe your coach didn't. He felt, do it this way.
Right.
Because my way or the highway.
That's right. That's
right.
right.
And that happens, But now, when you think about pro baseball, most of these guys in pro ball have such natural talent mm-hmm. that they develop their own sort of technique. And when you're growing up as a kid, mm-hmm. one of the things you want to do is you want to be just like him.
That's exactly right.
So you start to do but basically the technique, the great players like Willie Mays, mm-hmm. guys who really could hit that ball, man. I think, San Francisco was my team, and they called him the Say Hey Kid. I think wasn't that his nickname?
I can't remember.
But he was so skillful, man, and the agility that he showed in playing baseball was just unbelievable.
Wow.
But if you go way back, and I don't want to date myself, mm-hmm. but if you go way back to guys like Satchel Paige, and if you study baseball, Gibson, these guys, man, just had so much raw talent,
right,
that it really didn't matter one way or another.
Right.
I mean. When Satchel Paige finally got to the major league, he was really a relief pitcher. But the guy just had skills that were not even diminished regardless of the length of time it took him to get there.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's
you can't coach that. You can't teach it. Well, let me ask you this. What do you think of baseball today versus baseball yesterday? And the reason I ask that is because I was a big baseball fan in my youth. For me, the game changed a bit when they broke up and went with, they went away from the old pennant system where you had the AL East, the AL West, the NL East, and the NL West.
Yeah.
I thought baseball was more exciting then. When they introduced the wild card, it got a little bit, I got a little bit bored with it. But mm-hmm. let me ask you, for you, do you feel like the game has changed between yesterday and today? Where is that change taking place, and how has that changed? How do you feel about it?
Well, I think naturally there's been a great change. And really, I think the change has very little to do with the caliber of players. We're not producing players like your Satchel Paige and some of those guys when they had the old Negro League.
Right.
But what I think happened is money. Everything now is about dollars.
Yes, yes.
And I think that has affected it greatly. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I think these guys have to collect on their skills while they can, because that it's a real meat market. I mean, when the meat's not fresh anymore, they got to bring in a new ham.
That's right. That's right.
So, but I think my opinion is I think that baseball will never be like it was, because you had guys back then that would play if they weren't getting paid. I mean, they just loved the game. And now you got all your high-powered agents, and you got endorsements, and you got all this other stuff, and it leaves little time for the athlete to really fall in love with his craft.
Right.
And I think you can't blame them for that, because the run is short, and the competition is great. So
Do you feel like, to what degree do you feel like some of the other big money sports, not saying that baseball isn't, because actually baseball, some of the baseball salaries are ridiculously high compared to the NBA and especially the NFL, way higher. But do you feel like there's a higher appeal to playing some of the other sports, and how do you feel like those sports have been affected, or those sports have affected baseball negatively, especially with regards to the Afro-American player?
Well, I think what you have to look at is that football will always be sort of that sport that everybody gravitates to, because you know what? We love gladiators, man.
Yeah.
And these guys are real gladiators.
Yes, they
man.
are. Yes, they
and
are.
we a gladiator goes to the Coliseum, and the rougher he is, and the more mayhem he brings to the Coliseum, the more the people love it.
That's it. We love brutality.
Yeah,
it's just
man.
how it is. It's how it is.
If you looked at the movie Spartacus, man, look at I mean, it's just that. And football is a very brutal sport,
It
man.
is. It is.
I mean, those guys, by the time they retire, they've earned every dime of it, because their bodies are broken, and they got to play hurt, and there's a lot to it. So I think when you look at the different sports, football is the sport that will always draw a crowd because of the brutality and the toughness of it, because you got to be tough to play.
That's right.
Basketball is a little bit different, because skill in basketball is 99.9%, because it is difficult. I don't care what anybody says, to drop a ball that size through a hoop that size. I mean, that takes great skill, especially for 30 feet out, or And so I think it's a more skillful sport, in the sense that these guys, everything they do is in the wrist. And I played basketball not in high school, nor did I play it at any other level, but I played, pickup games. And I have always had a problem with my wrist.
Wow.
And that's been my issue, and no matter how much anybody tried to train me to just focus on the front of the rim, use your wrist, drop it over it. Man, that takes skill.
It does.
Nah,
and the
really
wrist
does.
action is different than baseball.
It's
a different wrist action.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask you this final question, and I want to wrap up with a hot button question. I'm going to turn the vice grip up just a little bit.
Yeah, don't make it too hot.
It's not too hot, but I'm going to twist your arm just a little bit.
Okay.
Now, considering the one, the danger involved in certain pro sports.
Right.
2, the money involved in certain pro sports, and 3, the fan appreciation of certain pro sports. If you had a young parent that came to you today and said, Dr. Miller, my kid's an athlete, they're going to be good in anything they play, what sport would you recommend to them, and why?
I guess the first question I'd ask, which sport does he love?
Oh, good question. Good question.
Because, I mean, wherever your heart is where you will be.
That's right.
And ultimately, at the end of the day, the parent is sort of the mentor for this child.
That's right.
But if the child is not in love with what you're trying to mentor them in, they will see it as a chore rather than a love. And I think any sport that a kid plays, because sports develops a sense of self-worth. It develops character. It develops so many things.
Yeah.
And if you've got a kid that loves baseball, but dad loves football, and the kid can play baseball and football, you have to be careful that you don't live your life vicariously through your child.
That's right.
Let him play baseball if that's his first love, because he'll play it whether they pay him or not. And that's so important, even though you know he's going to get paid. But his love for the sport is what's important. And I think anything you do in life, if you don't love it, you'll end up hating it at some point.
Well, those are certainly words to go out on. So for those of you that have tuned in to Maddie's Rap, we thank you for watching. For myself and Dr. David Miller,
it's been great, man.
Thank you.
And I thank you for having me on.
Thank you. For Maddie's Rap, it's a wrap. Talk to you next time.